I'm going to add some additional gems to the object layer of the tiled map and read it in using a different technique from the previous videos. I'm going to use the pixel art icon pack from artist Kainos, and I'm also going to get a tile set for Mossy Cavern from artist Malt. Both of these assets are the pay what you want, which could include up to 0. And I think realistically what most people do is they download it and initially they don't pay, but if they're going to release their game, it's optional. You actually never have to pay, but if you're making money from your game, why not give this guy a couple bucks or something? In order to prototype or rapidly develop our map, I'm actually just going to use the images from his demo to kind of give a feel for what the tile set is. So I'm actually not going to use the actual tiles in Tiled. I'm just going to download the demo images he has on the web page. However, for the gems, I'm actually going to grab the gem, which is a 32 by 32 pixel icon. I'm just going to use the cut ruby, just one of the 32 by 32 pixel icons. I did change the name to eliminate the spaces. Then I'm going to drag and drop this thing into the assets/images folder of the main game project. So before opening up Tiled, I'm putting the images that I'm going to use into the game. So you have to move it over into assets/images. If you don't do this, the tiled map editor will set up links to the images, in your library of game assets, which is not part of the game. So the first step is to move the Mossy Cavern and the cut ruby images that you want to use into the images or assets/images folder of your project. Then let's start up a new map in Tiled. Make sure that it's base 64 uncompressed. I'm using a 16 pixel by 16 pixel tile size for this map. That number is hard coded into the game. You can make the map size itself as big or as small as you want. So let's grab the image, the demo image from the artist, and make sure embed in map is checked. In this case, I'm using the demo image itself as the tiles. So I'm going to grab one of them, one of the 16 by 16 tiles. I'm going to assign it to a base layer so that we have some type of bluish color as the base layer. So what I did is I grabbed a single tile and then I dropped it in with bucket fill. And then I'm selecting stamp, and I'm stamping the entire graphic into the upper left-hand corner of it. So I'm just using this as a very fast way to get some type of map so that we can then test out the gems. This technique is only to quickly prototype some type of feel. So, maybe you want to see whether you want to actually use this tile set or not. And by using the demo images as the tile, it kind of gives you a feeling for what might be possible. Then you go back and then you make your own map if you like this. So I'm kind of giving it a platformer type feel, although we don't have gravity because we're not actually using velocity in this simplified demonstration. To simplify this entire series, I didn't use a gravity or velocity or acceleration. So the character is actually not going to drop and be stopped by the platform. Maybe we'll cover that in the future. Right now I'm just creating some type of pathway at one side so that the character can go down and maybe there's another subterranean chamber here. It's not going to really look that great, but I think it will be suitable for our tutorial where we're just trying to create some type of passageway for George to go through and collect some gems. I also am using a different technique to place the gems on the screen, which is the main point of the tutorial. So the tiled is based on layers. We're going to have a base layer, which is the base color, and the basic cavern, but there's no collidable objects on there. We need to create a bunch of different object layers. So these are this purplish pink color. And you will need the obstacles, the baked goods, and the friends. I'm creating this new layer, gems. You do need these 4 layers with this exact spelling of the object layer name for this tutorial. The 4 layers: gems, friends, baked goods, and obstacles. I'm going to drop in another subterranean chamber. And again, this technique I'm using is just so that we can get a feel for the tile set. This is not actually what you would do if you were making your game, but it kind of gives you a feel that this is a pretty nice tile set by the artist. I'm going to take a few of the squares, so the tiles on the tile set on the right. So even though it's a full image, right, you can select individual squares from it. I'm just trying to make a little corridor for George to go down through so that we can maybe test some of the obstacles and make it look a little bit more similar to how we might want it to be in an actual game. So I'll have a little corridor for him to go through, and then he can drop down all the way on the right of the map, drop down and then explore the subterranean caverns. So after you get the map looking at least how you want it for a test, main thing is that there's a corridor and we can test out whether he can go down. I'm going to save it, and then I'm going to move the cut ruby, the gem, which is the main point of this lesson, over from the asset file pack over into the assets/images of my actual project. The cut ruby is a 32 by 32 pixel single image. So when we import the tile set, this image into tiled as a tile set, I'm going to set the tile size to 32 by 32, even though there's only a single tile here. So let's adjust it. The tile width is going to be 32, and the tile height will also be 32. So now we have this single tile in here that we can drop in. So we're going to select the gems object layer, and we'll drop it in for the test. So I'm going to drop it right above the ground level. In the previous tutorials where I was dropping the baked goods down, I created 2 separate bounding boxes. That was for the simplicity of the code. Because the anchor point of these images, so in this case it's the cut ruby, it's actually different than the anchor point of the tiles. We're going to have to make an adjustment when we load in the gems layer. That is the main point of this tutorial, is if you're going to go forward and build this thing out, you do have to do an adjustment to the gems layer. Right now I'm just blocking out some of the top and bottom portions. This game won't be that good as a platformer because there's no gravity. The focus is just using the gems as an image and getting it into the obstacle layer. At this stage, in order to test the game, I'm going to go into the main my George game file. I'm going to change the first map from map.tmx, which was the first map we're loading, to this new scene4.tmx, which is this map with the mossy caverns that we're working on. Okay, this is just to see whether it loads. We're not loading the gems at this point. To me, this tile set just looks awesome. And it's a kind of a quick prototype here, but you can kind of get your imagination going and maybe imagine George finding a secret passage to a subterranean world at some point in your game. And that world does look quite different. But let's get started on the gem. This is the main point of the lesson before we get caught up in the plot here. I actually put that cut Ruby, accidentally the file, in characters. It should be in ACID/images. So I'm going to copy the friend component code and drop it into the gem component. Let's delete the code that's unused. So the commented out code from the dialog box, which we're no longer using. We can get rid of all the references to the dialog at the time of collision, because when you hit the gem, I don't think there's going to be any type of message that appears on the screen. We may want to change the sound effect, the special effects for the audio from the game.applause.start to another audio file, but that would make this particular video tutorial longer. So that would be left up to you. If you want like a boing or some type of special effect when you hit a gem here that's different than the baked goods. Let's start the process of changing the references to the friend to George, to the gem. We're not using the gems as a way to transition the scene, so we don't need that. So when it says friend component, let's change that to gem component. It's actually extending a sprite component because we want that image in there, not the position component. Oh, let's change the name of the constructor to, right now it's friend component for the constructor, and we'll change it to gem component, and then we'll move up the super.onCollision inside of the second to the last curly bracket so that it runs within the onCollision. So that super.onCollision, it's supposed to be part of that onCollision method. Just to be maybe more complete, we will create a variable, an integer variable in the myGeorgeGame for the gem inventory, but we're not going to put it onto the overlay right now. I think if you want to keep track of how many gems he has for some type of special prize, that'll be up to you in the future. I don't think I'm going to continue it in this tutorial. I think I'll create another tutorial series that maybe has gravity and also state management. However, just to let you know or get you started, if you wanted to continue on with and make more and more levels for the gems, we'll have a variable for gem inventory, and then we'll increment it at time of collision. So when he picks up the gem, we will at least increment it. There's no adjustment to the overlay, right? So if you wanted to have a score for the gems, you'd have to notify the overlay listener. Now we're going to need to create a loader for the gems, and also a sprite component for the gem, which we're going to call gem component. So let's start off with the loader, and we'll use the one from load friends, and we'll just convert the load friends code into load gems. So we'll use this one to load all the gems in the layer, the object layer from the map. This is different than the baked goods because right now we only have one type of gem. We're just using the uncut ruby, or sorry, the cut ruby. So there's no checks to change the graphic. It'll always be this one type of cut ruby. If you wanted to change the graphic and have different type of gems, you would use the baked goods as a template and then have an identifier such as the type of the gem to change the image of the gem and also maybe some other characteristics of the gem. They might be work, for example, different points or something. But there's only one type of gem in this tutorial. Okay, looks like we got it set up. And we just need to assign it to a sprite because the friend, if you recall, that friend is actually a tile that's on the map. It's not a sprite component. This one has to be async and await because it's loading it from disk and we want it to wait for it to load from disk. And then we pass it the name of the file that we have in our assets/images folder of our project. When we load the new scene, we'll create a Boolean check or an if statement to see if the scene is equal to 4. So if you wanted to have the gems in your game going forward and you have more than 4 scenes, it'd be greater than or equal to 4. However, because I'm going to stop it after this video, we'll just have it be if the scene number equals 4. So if you were going to continue on, you'd probably want to change that to greater than or equal to. Also probably insert a check to see what the maximum number of scenes are. In the area where you're checking to see which scene you're on in order to change the map, insert another if statement. So if the scene number is equal to 4, then change the map file. So there's 2 changes that are taking place if it's scene 4. One is you're loading the gems, which we just did, and the other is you have to change the map file to the new map file. For testing purposes, I'm going to set the initial scene to scene 3. The scene number, and then we'll immediately go into scene 4 for testing. So look at line 12. This is very critical. We're going to adjust the gem box height. On the scene 4 map, we don't have any baked goods or friends, so there's actually no way to switch the scene automatically. So I'm going to put the initial map back in for the first scene. So this scene does have the baked goods and the friends, right? So you don't have to go through it in order to test it. So it's now detecting the scene change correctly, and we can see that the gems are placed accurately in the Y coordinate. In order to get the accurate placement of the gem, we are subtracting the height of the tile from the Y coordinate. And this is due to the way that the tiled does the anchor point for the images when they're placed onto the object layer. I'm going to switch it to game.remove to remove it from the game and then restart it, and we'll test it again to see whether the gem is being removed from the game. And it is. And no gravity, but he can walk down the pathway and see the next chamber. Go George. Okay, and let's see whether these collisions work as well. It does. So I'll reset the game back to using scene 1 from the beginning. And so there'll be 4 scenes currently. The first 2 scenes are the general village. The third scene is indoor. So there's a ice cream shop and some other type of indoor scenes where we hide the pastries around. And in the 4th scene, so it should trigger it right here if it works. Boom, it does work. Okay. And then he finds some type of magical subterranean chamber where there's gems, maybe there's treasure and other types of elements here. Congratulations. Thanks to George for his work in helping us get this far. Have a great day. Subscribe to the channel for updates on the more than 50 videos I've made on Flame. The videos with source code are also available for free on Teachable, 100% free course if this is a hobby. In whatever way you choose to learn, make sure you have fun and unleash your creativity. Have a fantastic day.